What rules do you live your life by? Are they your rules or someone else's? In today's episode, we are going to talk about how to determine the rules you're living your life by right now, and how to create your own rules for living a life that excites you and fills you with joy. Today's guest left a 20-year career as a corporate trainer to go in search of a life that filled her heart and sparked her creative passions. In this episode, she will share with us the emotions that came with this transition and the lessons she has learned along the way. You're listening to the Positively Delighted Show, episode number 7. Welcome to the Positively Delighted Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Henry, and in this podcast, we'll be creating a positive mindset through inspirational interviews, music, stories, and exercises for building happy habits. Welcome to episode 7. I'm recording today's episode from my brother's apartment in New York City, so you might hear some traffic and sirens in the background. I'm doing a little tour of the East Coast right now. I came up yesterday to New York from Boston, where I ate many lobster rolls. Last week, I was in Philadelphia eating Philly cheesesteaks and attending the Podcast Movement Conference, which was amazing. I met so many cool people and learned a ton of valuable tips to improve my podcast skills and your podcast listening experience here on the show. All summer, I have been working on this podcast with the goal of launching before the Podcast Movement Conference, and I did it. I was able to attend the conference not just as a podcast producer for other podcasts, but also as a podcaster myself. So I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to everyone who has supported the show, listened to episodes, and sent me words of encouragement the past few weeks. I even had one friend who sent a greeting card to my hotel in Philly. Nadia, you are amazing. Thank you to everyone. You are the best. Today on the podcast, we are going to get into a topic that we haven't covered too much yet, and that is careers. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Camille Attell from More Than A Wheelin. For 20 years, Camille and her husband Bryce both had successful careers in the corporate world. Camille worked as a corporate trainer, and Bryce worked as a financial planning analyst, until they decided to make a radical life change, which involved selling their home, downsizing their possessions, and leaving their very stable careers. They wanted to live a life on purpose that they could be excited about. So they jumped headfirst into full-time RVing and have been traveling for the past 2 years. Now, Camille runs her own business and teaches her program, Remote Work School, which helps others transition to a life of travel and working remotely. There are 2 main topics from this interview that I found really interesting. The first is the idea of living by your own rules. And this came from a line that Camille wrote on the About page for More Than A Wheelin. She said, "After 20 years, it was time to create new rules and let my inner unicorn fly free. Now I help others do the same." And this comment really sparked a fascinating conversation because we're all living by some set of rules, whether that's our own rules or rules from society, our families, our religions, etc. And Camille talks about the perspective that she grew up with and how this played out in her life, including the inner struggle of feeling successful and important in her career, yet knowing that she was also denying an important part of herself by not following her creative passions. The other main topic that I found really interesting in this interview was how she described the emotional transition of giving up her career to live the full-time RV life. There's never a perfect time to make a big life change, and she specifically mentions the fears and struggles that you overcome during this process. She talks about the balance of losing your identity on the way to becoming who you want to be, and also provides inspiration for going after a life and career that fills your heart with joy. So I'm excited. I hope you are too. Let's get into the interview with Camille Attell from More Than A Wheelin. Okay, well, Camille, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you. And I'm really interested in the conversation that we're going to get into and just a little bit about you and your husband, Bryce. So you've been traveling around in an RV since 2016.
Yes,
Okay.
that is right.
Yes. And what's interesting, I think, about your story too, is that you talk about on your website about you'd spent 20 years in the corporate world, and you always said, okay, well, I live by the mindset of I need to go to school, I need to get a job, I need to buy a house. And 20 years into that, you were like, I'm a unicorn and I just want to spread my wings and I need to do this. So can you just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself and where you guys are at right now?
Sure. I love that you know my unicorn reference.
I identify with your unicorn reference.
I know you do. That's so great. But I love that you read our website and actually referred to the unicorn. That's so cool. Sure. Yeah. Let me. I'll kind of do a little summary here.
Yeah.
Try to cover all the things you just said, and I know we'll go deeper. So I don't want to say too much all at once. So stop me if I'm kind of droning on here. But yeah, so we're digital nomads, my husband Bryce and I, and we've been on the road for almost 2 years, and we travel with our cat Parker as well. And we had really long, successful careers in corporate America. Bryce was a financial planning analyst, making, helping companies make really big financial decisions. And I was a corporate trainer and a coach, and I've trained everything from like systems and sales, done employee empowerment and career development, all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And then, we walked away after 20 years, and now we run a website called More Than A Wheelin, and that offers RV life, travel, and remote work resources. And I also run an online course called Remote Work 101, Work, Live, and Travel Where You Want. I know we'll probably talk about that later, so I won't dig too deep, but that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of what we're up to today. I'll stop there because I'm sure you're going to lead us into some other territory.
I have many questions, many things prepared.
Yay.
All right. So you worked this career, and what was the inciting incident that led you to deciding to just completely radically change your lifestyle?
Yeah. So I actually think it was a series of unconscious decisions. So there was a turning point, which I'll talk to, but I think one of the things that I study and that I talk about a lot is that, you've got this conscious life of obvious things, and then you have this unconscious stuff running beneath that you may not even be aware of. And I think that's what was happening for me for really 20 years, that I just sort of fought. But the actual moment that you're asking me about has to do with a sofa.
Yeah. Okay.
I blame the sofa is what I tell people.
Blame the sofa.
Yeah, I can blame it on the sofa because what happened is my husband and I got married in 2014, and we had a series of events, I'll call them, where we were renting a house and we got kicked out of that house because the owner was selling it. That's a whole nother story. And we quickly bought a home.
That's always a fun thing. Let's quickly buy a home.
Yeah, let's quickly buy a home. One of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Let's rush into that. And we did. We did that in about 30 days, moved in, and then we
30 days?
30 days, yeah.
You found the home, bought it, and moved in?
Roughly. I mean, maybe 40 days. I mean, it was so fast. Really fast. And then that house had a slab leak, which is the pipes burst underneath the home, and it flooded the home. We had mold, and we had to move out, and we were in a hotel for weeks, like 9 weeks. And Bryce had a back injury that for the first time ever in his career took him out of work. I was getting hit with a lot of medical bronchitis, sinusitis, multiple times a year. So we were just run down and exhausted. And by the time we got back into the house that we had to furnish, that we left unfurnished for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Yeah, something changed. We looked at furniture, and we were going back and forth between literally a taupe or a camel colored sofa. And
it was something
big decision here. Yeah. And there was something about that big decision that it just felt so meaningless and so ridiculous.
Was it the fact that was one of your biggest decisions in your life at that point, was choosing between taupe and camel colored sofas?
It felt like it was a big decision, but I think it was a distraction.
Yeah.
And it just opened my eyes to why am I struggling over this? And I think we realized we were struggling over it because we weren't excited about the next phase of life.
Yeah.
And sofas are heavy, and it felt heavy.
Yeah.
And none of it felt exciting. And so I'll stop there. But that's kind of what it just changed our whole conversation about the next, whatever decade of our lives.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I have personally bought a couch at this point in my life. I could say that I've done that. And that was a huge, it might be a piece of furniture, but that's a big financial commitment.
Yes.
And I mean, when I was growing up, we were kind of in between like RVing and staying in this townhouse we were renting. And we lived in the townhouse for like 6 months without any furniture because we didn't think we were going to live there. We thought it was just temporary. And so we just had literally camping chairs in our living room. And then finally we thought, okay, we're going to live here. And we bought the cheapest sofa we could find. And then within like a couple weeks, we're like, no, we want to go back into the RV. And we had, it was such a pain to get rid of that thing. We had to, we couldn't sell it, at that point, like it wasn't really worth much. So we just had the Salvation Army come out and get it. But it's such a waste,
Yeah. I relate to your story. I mean, there's something very permanent about furniture.
There is.
And it's just, I don't know. And when you're kind of a little bit more nomadic, if that's in your blood or your upbringing or whatever, I don't know. There's just sort of a reaction to furniture.
Yeah, no, because like you said, it's very permanent. It is very heavy because now in your RV lifestyle, technically you don't really own any furniture that's not attached to it.
That's right.
I mean, you might have like a desk chair or something that you bring in, but there's not much else you can modify.
Yeah, we have a couple of lawn chairs and that's about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, and those are light.
Those are light.
They're replaceable. So with that, had you always kind of felt like you wanted something different? I mean, what was that internal struggle like where you say on your website, you grew up with the mindset from your grandparents that you identified more with what they said about go to school, get a job, get a house.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, so I was raised a lot by my grandparents.
Okay.
My parents were more in the, I guess I'll call them hippies. I mean, they really were hippies. They lived in San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury. They were part of the movement. But beyond that, they were also they weren't your traditional parents. Like we didn't have dinner every night. And we didn't have, they weren't checking my schoolwork or anything. They were off doing their own things, having fun. And they divorced when I was 5. So my grandparents truly raised me, and they are Depression era.
Yeah.
So I had these two very opposing, very conflicting kind of life role models, I suppose. So I was always at odds with sort of this free spirit that I have and, kind of a wild spirit. And then my grandparents were very, all about security and, safety. And that's how they lived. So sure, I always had these opposing forces and I never quite fit into either one of those.
Yeah.
I always go back and forth. I'm always going between kind of like flying by the seat of my pants and then kind of getting scared back into, I better get serious again and settle down and, build security. So,
yeah,
but I've accepted that. That's, I go back and forth and that's okay. It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. It's all about the balance of having that security, but also, wanting to go do these things. I mean, I definitely feel that because I grew up with the RV lifestyle, but my dad is also like a banking executive in his career. So he was very much about like insecurity. So he's like super prepared. He's like, his favorite quote is chance favors the prepared mind.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, it's a good one, but it's also just like I have sometimes this weird back and forth where I'm like super hopeful about the world. And then I'll be like, I'm going to lock my car 5 times before I go into the grocery store.
Yes.
It's very conflicting.
Yes. But you know what? I think I think having both of those perspectives is very helpful. Like you said, it's balanced, but I also think it's well-rounded. It brings grounding to a creative spirit because, if you're too heavily focused on security, then you're afraid of everything and you're not having fun or taking risks. But if you're too focused on living a purely creative life, well, then you might end up having no money when you're in your 40 or whatever. So, you got to blend the both.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. So with that, how do you kind of with yourself, how do you try to balance those two? I mean, when say like if a situation comes up or you're planning for something, do you kind of hear both sides of yourself like speak up and then you kind of like, okay, I'm listening to you and I'm going to do this, you know?
Well, I will say that right now, in the current state that I'm in, the creative life is winning.
Okay.
And that's because I spent 20 years doing the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you asked me the question earlier about the mantra, get a job or go to school, get a job, get a house. And that comes from my grandparents. And that's what I did for 20 years. It was their blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for that because I have that experience. It was very grounding for me and I know how to do that stuff. What I've been neglecting, Kelsey, is really like my creative spirit. I'm super creative, but that has been on lockdown for a really, really long time. And so now I'm exploring so many creative endeavors, writing and blogging and creating courses and even some art. So I'm a little bit neglectful right now of the more pragmatic, for example, I'm trying to launch different income streams and a business. I think that's what it is. I think I have a business on my hands.
You have a business.
But I'm really terrible at bookkeeping and I'm really terrible at like understanding the accounting side of it. Mm-hmm. Because it's really hard for me to be creative and then do that other stuff at the same time. So luckily Bryce, who's the numbers guy, he can do that stuff much better than I can. I mean,
it's so convenient.
Background. Yeah. I mean, we're not great at it still because we're living in an RV and trying to go out and have fun a lot and see the beautiful country we live in and do fun things and all of that. So we're still trying to find balance, but we'll get there.
Yeah. No, I know that one of the things that you do also on your website is you talk to people about the emotional transition into RVing, because I think that's a lot of people don't think about. And I know on my episode 3 of the podcast, I talked with Alyssa on how, like when you complain to your friends, say if I complain about, okay, like I went on this adventure and I had trouble working on the road. My friends at my corporate job are not gonna have sympathy for me.
Right.
They're not going to understand. Like, they're going to be like, your life is so Instagram amazing. It's like, what do you have to complain about? But when you talk to your other RV friends, they're like, oh my gosh, I struggle with that too. It's all about not necessarily complaining, but complaining to the right people.
Yeah.
Because they'll hold a place for you and help you work through it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that you could say it's transition to RV life as an example, but really any transition that somebody goes through where they're leaving an old life behind and trying to reinvent a new life or a new way of being or new rules, you're always going to have those kinds of emotions, or maybe not always, but many people have those reactions. And I think it's important to normalize that.
Yeah.
And make that okay and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your journey now, and you talked about your years in the corporate environment, and you're saying how, you're grateful for that experience because, I mean, you wouldn't be the same person you are today if you hadn't done that.
Right.
I mean, you would have ended up somewhere completely different. So what have you learned from your years in the corporate environment that you've taken into this new life?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that I'm a bit of a wild spirit, and I think that working in corporate America was a positive experience for me. It was very grounding. Meaning it added a sense of reality to my creative mind. I can really get stuck in my creative thoughts pretty easily. I have a lot of creative ideas and I could live in the clouds pretty easily. And I think working in corporate environments where there are deadlines and projects and people that you're accountable to really pulls you back down to earth. And it also helps me actually execute on ideas. I'm able to take an idea from fruition into reality. And I think I really owe my corporate experience for being able to do that because I was a project manager as well.
That's helpful.
Super helpful. And I think working in corporate America has given me the ability to see multiple perspectives and respect different ways of thinking.
Yeah. To work with so many different people.
Work with different people, different ways of working, styles, political backgrounds, belief systems, all of that. And I think it's helped me develop a ton of compassion and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily because of corporate life. That's because I've been in fields like counseling and coaching, with my first job being helping people get off of welfare back into the workforce.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I feel like I'm very grateful because I just have a more well-rounded way of seeing the world than I would have had I not been in, corporate environments.
Yeah. And I totally can see that, especially with, what you're doing now with helping people find remote jobs and transitioning into just a different type of lifestyle. The fact that you have those years of experience of just working with people to build off of.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah. And I will say, like, for myself, I really didn't think that I would end up wanting to do RVing. When I was growing up, I was in it. I didn't think about it. I was like, this is my life.
Right.
I didn't think about it. And my whole life was focused on like that whole, okay, well, this is fun, but we have to overcompensate for what we're doing for your childhood right now. It's kind of like my parents and I, we were on this really grand adventure, but we didn't know anyone who was in RV life at that point. So they just kept saying, well, we gotta work hard on school so you can get into college, you can get a good job, and you can still end up like everyone else. And with the best intentions, that's what we thought, because we didn't know. And at every point that I worked through, they were super proud of me, but we just didn't really know that this lifestyle was something that was done necessarily.
Right.
And so I worked really hard, got through school, went and got into my first job, and I was like, this is the best possible job I could have gotten. And I was so proud of myself. And I sat in at my job, and it's like within the first week, I was completely miserable.
Oh my gosh. Within the first week.
And it was just, I was not expecting that, like the program, I was in this amazing training program, yet there was a lot of bickering, and it wasn't focused on the work. And I'd never been so controlled in when I could do something, where I had to be, what I had to be doing at any point. And because even in school, I had flexibility. And I kind of started that. I had that really big internal struggle of I love what I'm doing. And you mentioned that on your website, you loved what you were doing, but there was just a piece of you that you knew just wasn't being satisfied.
Yeah.
And I just struggled with that so much.
I could imagine. The way you grew up, it's almost like we had the opposite experiences, really, where you grew up in a much less structured way. And then to have to go into this structured environment.
Structured.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. But I'm so grateful that I went through it, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have known.
Right. Exactly.
And it was just like I got into the job and my whole illusion was just shattered. Everything I ever thought my life would be. Wow. And how I was supposed to live it. And then I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. I was like, is this going to be the rest of my life? Is the only thing that I have to look forward to is my next promotion? Exactly. And you mentioned that in your about page. You're like, I started to just base my life around my next peer review and where I was going next and what my boss thought of me.
That's so true. Wow. I really do relate to that, where it's like, that's your main source of excitement, is your next promotion.
Yeah.
Or job title. Yeah. Wow. Huh. Well, it's a good thing you figured that out as quickly as you did and didn't spend 20 years like me.
But we're each on our own journey. And I'll say, like, what you've gone through at this point it's given you so much life experience. And how do you feel like that's going to help you in what you're trying to do now?
That's a great question. I wish I had a really succinct answer for you, but I'm in the middle of it. That's beautiful. Yeah. And I'm happy that I'm in the middle of it, because to be honest with you, like I said, the first 20 years, I felt very secure. Like I knew the path I was on, and I knew what I needed to do to get the next promotion. And I knew how I needed to behave to get a good review and get my raise. Like I know how to play that game.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it kind of almost unconsciously. And I got myself the house, and I have bought furniture. Like I've done all that. And now I'm in this phase of like, I don't really know where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm. It's scary, but it's exciting.
It's scary and exciting. And I'm living a creative life, and it's really cool. And it's frightening on many days because it's in such contrast with what I was doing before. And I am literally making it up as I go.
Yeah.
And some days are amazing because there are days where I hear from people that like read our blog or that have gone through my course, and they're like, this really touched me, or this improved my life, or wow, I'm so inspired, or hey, Camille, I got a job. Like that, those days are filled with so much inspiration and excitement. And then like the next day, I might be in the dumps because of whatever. I don't know. Who knows? And so I'm learning how to manage that experience, the highs and the lows and the roller coaster, which again is in complete contrast to my very, stable life before.
Yeah. And I totally get that, because the beauty of having a full-time job or like the corporate job or just working for someone else is that you have a set of things you have to do. And when you do those things, you get paid and you keep your job usually. And you know what rules to live by. Mm-hmm. But when you're creating your own rules, it's kind of, like you're creating your own rules, but also, to get money, you have to do certain things. You have to sell to people, and you have to make connections, and you have to reach people and help people and improve yourself and build these products, but then also have money to survive. And it's just, there's so many things you're balancing. And also you're in this beautiful place and you want to go out and explore it, but you may need to do some other stuff so you can keep your financial runway. There's a lot more to think about than people think.
There's a lot more to think about, but I'll tell you, I feel so awake. Mm-hmm. I feel so alive. Even the highs and the lows, I don't love feeling discomfort, like anxiety or frustration or whatever. However, it's a lot better than feeling nothing.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's a lot better than feeling numb and sort of just safe and secure. And, that to me, I can only live that kind of life for so long. This is just a lot more alive.
That's a really interesting point. Mm-hmm. And just, wow, even that just really hits me of just feeling, I think it's easy when you're stuck, when you're just feeling stuck, you may not even necessarily be stuck, or you feel obligated. Like I loved the job that I was doing, and I felt so much dedication to my team. I mean, when I told my boss that I was leaving, I was crying so hard. He had to like take me on a walk and, bless his heart, like coax it out of me. He was a really good manager. Aww. But I was just, I was quitting to finish grad school. I wasn't just quitting to just like take off and travel. I mean, that was my goal. But I mean, I was I never really quit anything like that before. Mm-hmm. It was terrifying.
Mm-hmm. It is very hard to leave behind not just the stability. It is very practical stability, right? You need money to live, all that. But for me, and you might relate to this somewhat, but I'm more years in than you, but I also left behind an identity.
Yeah.
Right? A work identity, a community identity, the paycheck, the
reputation in your field.
Exactly. Yeah. I was respected. People knew me, so there's a lot to let go of. And so, yes, it'll bring up a lot of emotions, like what you were feeling when you left your job.
Yeah. And I think that that's so brave. You had all those things, and that's a lot to give up. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're not necessarily giving those things up either. So I think it's an interesting perspective of like a lot of our fears, how much of our fear is real, and how much of it is just in our head, because who's to say that your reputation is changed at all?
Right. You're right. That's a very interesting way to frame it.
Because I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm I mean, this is like a sales page, basically. We're going through your resume, and I feel more and more and more respect for what you're doing as you talk about the things you've done before.
Aw, thank you. That means a lot to me.
Like, you're welcome. But yeah. But it's so true though, because a lot of the times, I mean, especially like we see people on their websites and stuff, and that's what I really love about these conversations is that you get to see more about a person, and one conversation could change everything. And, if you don't know something about a person, then, I mean, how are you going to know it? So that's really interesting. But I can definitely see that. I mean, it is something that it's a whole lifestyle that you're changing.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you can be anyone you want to be, and you can always go back.
Exactly. Yes. And that's one of the things that we told ourselves. So, I think some people would say, well, it's not that hard for you to leave. I'm in my 40s. I've built up some savings. Like I said, security was kind of my goal. So yeah, on the one hand, you could say, well, it's not that hard to walk away because I set myself up. Of course, I need to work. It's not like I can retire or anything.
Yeah. But
on the other hand, if you think about that was my whole identity, was build up security, save, get, lock the things down in life you're supposed to. So it's almost harder to walk away when you're at that phase in life.
Totally.
Say if you had never built those things up and, because they weren't part of your fabric of who you were. But to walk away from all of that at this phase in life where I'm not retired and I have many more years of work ahead of me.
Yeah.
And now I'm not just reinventing my identity, but I'm reinventing how I earn an income. Yeah, that's a little much sometimes.
I can totally see that, because it would be so easy to fall into the trap of, well, let's just wait a few more months.
Yes.
Let's just wait till the next promotion.
Yep.
And I mean, I can definitely identify with that. I mean, I went through so much to leave my first job that when I was finishing up grad school, I wanted to start my own business, but I was so afraid. And I mean, financially, it was just, I was really worried about it. And I was had very low confidence at the time. And so when a job opportunity came up, I took it. Yeah. And I was like, well, this is too good to pass up for my career. I can't, I can't not take it. And then I got into it, and I was like, this is not for me. It's not for me. I know this is wrong. And then I got let go.
Oh, wow.
And it was right after I graduated.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just this big ordeal where I was let go, but they weren't letting me go. So I had to end up leaving on my own. So I didn't get any severance or anything.
Oh,
and so it's a big HR nightmare. And it was like, just like an identity crisis all the way through again, because I wanted to leave the job, but I didn't want to leave like that.
You wanted to leave on your own terms.
Yeah. Like this, I wasn't financially prepared for it to end right now.
Right. Yes.
So life never goes exactly how you plan.
Never really does.
It never does. But I also feel like what you're doing right now, it could not only be just good for you, but it could just completely propel your career. I mean, like, even if you were to go back into the corporate world to say, hey, I went and did this on my own for a few years.
Right.
You don't have a gap there.
No.
You just have experiences and stories to tell that make you more interesting.
Yeah. You know what? I have learned more in the last 2 years doing what I'm doing now than I had in the last decade in my corporate environment. And I switched jobs in my old corporate job like 5 times, because I'm like that. Like every 2 years I get a little bored. I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So I was one of those people where they would put in internships or put me on special assignments or projects or whatever, which was great. And I learned a lot, but oh my goodness, running your own business, that's on a whole nother level. I mean, the amount of things you have to learn and tackle and overcome it's big.
What would be something that just really stands out to you that you've learned?
How to build a website with no experience, how to blog, how to earn income on my own, how to sell.
Each of those things
products. It's just like never ends. It never, ever ends. But it's awesome. I love it. I love learning.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And just so much. I mean, you're giving yourself a whole new education.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
So with that, I mean, you're living this new life. What kind of new rules are you creating for yourself?
Yeah. And I thought about that because I saw that as a question and I was like, ooh, I haven't been conscious about that. Like, what are my new rules?
Good, I think self-reflective question.
Very self-reflective. Yes. And like I said earlier in this interview, I'm still figuring it all out. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've been more conscious of lately is really getting aware of my time, how I spend my time, and what I choose to do with my time. So because I see time as being so precious now, like every hour is something where I can either be creating something of value or doing something fun. I now am less eager to do stuff I don't like to do.
Yeah.
The people that maybe I don't really want to work with, I don't. Projects I don't want to work on, I put them aside. So I have more choices of what to do with my time where I didn't have that as much before. Mm-hmm. So that's a new rule. I'm trying to think of, and I'm trying to get better with balance. I'm a workaholic. I'm actually more of a workaholic now than I was in corporate.
I can believe it.
Really?
With your own business, especially if you're excited about it, it's so easy to just get lost in it for hours and hours and hours. Yes. Especially when you only have good internet at certain locations.
That's so true. Yes. And so I'm trying to figure that out right now. Like, I think a new rule I need to establish is how to separate, like how to not be working on the business 24 hours a day. That's just not healthy. I will burn out. And so I'm trying to figure out how can I be more intentional about balancing the business stuff with going out and having fun. Cause that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I'm doing this to see the world, to do fun things, not just to sit behind a computer and pump out a blog post,
Yeah, well, it's an interesting balance with your life, though, because sometimes going out and doing, like, documenting that fun thing you did is part of your business.
Well, so I'm actually struggling with that right now because it isn't. Like, I'm not a YouTuber or I don't do video content really. Mm-hmm. I wish I had started that way because then I could go out and have fun and just document that and
write everything off.
Make that content available, but I didn't design my business around that. So that's a little harder.
That's fine.
Yeah, it is. But gosh, there's so many beautiful things. It's like, I really should be videoing this, but it's just everything you do is just more work you create for yourself.
I know.
So you have to figure that out.
And I've tried to kind of be conscious of that, especially because I like to have little businesses in all of my interests. So everything's tax deductible.
Yes.
So it's like, oh yeah, you can't really complain, mom and dad, that I just brought home a bag full of craft supplies because greeting card business, bam.
That's good.
Yeah. Until it backfires on you and you're like, I have so many like packs of paper, I can't live in a car anymore.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. There's always a cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's really interesting. And it's good that you're being so conscious of your business and your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you have to be if you want it to work.
Yeah.
And you have to start, like, there's a phase of business I've learned in the first year that's super chaotic and confusing and very gray, and you don't know what you're building really. And then kind of in the second year, you start to get, at least for me, more clarity around what is it I want to be doing? Mm-hmm. What is it that adds value to other people? Where do I really want to spend my time? And how do I make it all sustainable?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get to that phase. Otherwise it'll just die on the vine.
Yeah, absolutely. And building something on your own. I mean, there's so many emotions involved around that because it's so, I mean, everyone's always like, oh, it's not personal, it's business. But when you run your own business, it is personal.
Yes, so true.
So I'm curious, in this past 2 years, well, you've been traveling full time and also learning how to run your own business, mm-hmm. and everything that all the experience you've had in your life that's led up to this point. I mean, what are some of the biggest changes you've noticed in yourself in the past 2 years?
So one of the biggest changes is that I'm more tolerant of, and I mentioned this earlier, almost like the emotional swings. Mm-hmm. So, I think human beings, we are designed to avoid pain and discomfort, right?
Yeah.
And really think about, like, your show is about positivity and, you know, kind of the sunnier side and, you know, kind of looking for the more uplifting parts of life. And that's all great. And I fully subscribe to that. However, I think that when we run from pain or discomfort or the things that we term at negative or whatever, we are really missing out on so many other lessons.
Yeah.
And so I'm developing a larger capacity to feel all of the emotions and not run away or shut down or numb out.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to learn there. And so I'm learning how to kind of like balance all of that and just sort of be a bigger container to experience all of that and not deem it negative or dark or whatever words you want to use to describe things like anxiety or even depression, etc.
I absolutely. And I believe that by leaning into your emotions, I mean, you can understand more about where those are coming from. And if you don't face it, I don't think a positive mindset is going to be real.
Totally agree. Yeah, I was listening to a life coach. I don't know if you know her. Her name's Brooke Castillo.
I think I've heard of her.
She's really interesting. And what I like about her approach is she says you're going to spend about 50% of your life in the darker emotions.
Yeah.
You know, and so so what are you going to do? You're just going to like chop off 50% of your life and deem it unworthy? You know what I mean? Or are you going to figure out how to work with all of that and like how to use it and how to like, how can you take those emotions and help them propel you into some other more positive aspects? So that's kind of what I'm working with right now.
Absolutely.
It's like one of the biggest changes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so true. Like, feeling good is fantastic. And I love feeling good.
Yeah.
I like to really feel good, not feel the like, I'm going to tell myself I feel good, but really right now I'm really angry about something.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. So as you've been traveling and I mean, living in an RV with your spouse or significant other or with anyone, it comes with its own challenges. So what do you feel like you and Bryce have learned about each other on the road?
Well, one of the things that I think we've learned is that we actually are pretty good at this. Like,
good.
Yeah, we operate pretty well in a small space. I think I've developed a lot more respect and empathy for him. Not that I wasn't, respectful before, but
absolutely.
I think, you have to navigate in a small space. You have to encounter challenges. Like yesterday, it was kind of a rough day. We had some mechanical challenges and driving through some harrowing traffic. And, it's
just fun in an RV.
Yes. Oh my gosh. People just step right out in front of giant RVs, like in a crosswalk. It's just nuts.
That's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And so just learning how to be less reactive and really kind of put myself in his shoes. He's doing most of the driving and what that must be like for him and trying to find ways to calm him. So we work really well together in a small space, but not always. I mean, we're learning that we both need our own time. You've got to be able to do my own thing. We were both so independent before. We got married kind of later in life, so we kind of did our own things, and so now we're just together 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's a big change.
It's a big radical change. But we do pretty well. I know a lot of couples who say they could never do this, and I understand that, but once you get in it, you figure it out. You figure out how to navigate.
You adapt it. I mean, you're both on a journey together, and it's like when I was growing up, a lot of people would say, I can't imagine living in an RV with my parents. It's like, well, I didn't really have another choice.
Right.
So you kind of either have to be miserable or be fine with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there were the first 6 months of us living on the road, I slept on the couch and it'd be like 3 a.m. and mom's watching Lifetime movies and I have 2/3 of the couch. I just got used to it. And so because of that, for my 13th birthday, my parents took out their recliners and they sacrificed their recliners build me a bed.
Oh, that's so
And
sweet.
No 13-year-old has ever been so happy to get a bed for their birthday.
I love that. It's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all relative. So that's the thing. I'm not saying like take something away from your child and then give them something so they'll be more grateful, but
right.
Some situations it does work.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating.
Puts it in perspective. And I think that it's just like you said, in that small space, you really have to be more aware. You can't just run away from things. And it's good. It's just huge for personal growth. It is. I mean, no matter what you guys do after this, just being able to take that with you because it's going to be habitual by that point.
Yeah, there are a lot of learning curves in this lifestyle. Everything from relational to financial to physical. I mean, my goodness, never ends.
Well, I think it's good to, no matter what kind of like lifestyle change you might think about making, it's kind of good to live a different life for a while because you discover more about who you are. I mean, you might try something else and be like, oh, nope, definitely don't like that. But then
Yes, I have learned that I am not a good Pinterest virtual assistant.
Well, no, you don't.
But I only know that because I tried it and I'm terrible at it. So I will never do that again.
There you go. Yeah, and I have tried a lot of different things and I really struggle with working for the agency. I really struggled with working for an agency. I was like, oh, I have all these people that are telling me like, I wasn't even thinking about my clients. I was just thinking about, oh, well, my job has a set amount of hours and I have to be billable. So I have to be billable for 40 hours plus a week. And so if I take a longer lunch break, I have to stay longer. It's just a lot of things I don't want to have to think about. And then I kind of, in essence, created my own mini agency where it's just me and I have no backups. Oh. So it's kind of ironic, but at the same time, I know if I don't do it, I won't get paid. So, but no one tells me when I have to do it by.
Right.
Like it may have a deadline. Like I run a daily podcast, but no, they don't tell me at any point during the day, which it has to be in. They just know that every single day without fail, it's always in.
Right.
So it's very interesting to put that on yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And I find that I'm even more accountable than, say, if I had some sort of imposed deadline. It's more like now I know if I don't get the work done, I don't get paid. Yeah. So, not that wasn't that way before, but I feel so much more like there's more of a burden on me now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that was really interesting. I was having a conversation with some kids in grad school and they had not been in the workforce yet. Like they'd worked jobs, but they hadn't worked a corporate job. And we were just chatting and I made some comment about, well, if we turn in an okay paper and we get an okay grade, I think someone had said that if you turn in an okay grade, like we'll be fine. And I said something about, well, that's not going to work. And when you get out into the workforce, I mean, if you don't do your job, you get fired. And they're like, well, that's harsh. I'm like, that's a job, like it's harsh. Different than turning in a half-assed paper. You turn in a half-assed report at work, like you might get under review, if you don't show up for class, you're right. Oh, I think that's what it was. Someone didn't show up. And I think it's like, well, a group project, someone's going to pick up the slack. That's always the mentality. I'm usually that person that picks up the slack. And, but in a job, you can't do that. And, and it was just, it blew my mind to talk to other people who were like my peers and they're like, oh, that's harsh. That wouldn't happen. Yeah, harsh. It would.
As though that like you're being mean by saying that.
I'm like, I'm not being mean. That's just how it works. If you don't, if you're going to do something and someone's paying you and you don't do it, they're going to be pretty upset.
Right.
It's someone's money.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Just really interesting to think about that. And I mean, it's true, so. Yeah. Yep. Interesting. But so what advice would you have for others who want to create new rules for their life and live, I don't know, their truest lifestyle, whatever that might be for them?
Well, I think a couple different things come to mind. The first one is you have to really evaluate whose rules are you living by today.
Ooh, I like that.
Right? Like, are you living your blueprint or are you living someone else's blueprint? I was living my grandparents' blueprint and it served me for a while, but at some point, and I think this might be step 2, if these were steps, I don't know.
Yeah.
Would be is it still serving you? I mean, there's nothing wrong if you're living a blueprint that maybe isn't yours, but it still serves you, right? You're generally happy, or you feel like, okay, I might not be, skydiving in Argentina or anything, but I'm generally enjoying my life. And these rules serve me and serve my family or whoever, my community, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're checking in and you're like, you know what, I don't even feel like this is my life, or this just is not making me happy, or I know there's something else I'm supposed to be doing, then, you can take baby steps to explore, well, what else is there? You don't have to radically change your life like we did, because that's, that's a pretty huge step. But you can test out different things. You can do some low risk trial and error, try a new side job perhaps, or maybe pursue a hobby you've been thinking about for a little while. Just start to advance a little more in those areas that you want to explore, and don't put a lot of pressure on yourself that you have to be anything or, reach some sort of success in that area. Just try it on for size.
Yeah.
But you have to test. You have to get out there and see what else do you enjoy, or what are you good at, or what calls to you. And the other thing I'll say is it's a process. You don't just wake up one day and say, I have new life rules.
Yeah.
That's not how that works, right? You have to really venture out. And after you test some things, it's going to take some time to figure out what are your new rules that you want to establish. And that is a process. That could be that could be a 20-year process like it was for me. It doesn't have to be, it can be a shorter timeline, but really you have to be patient, and you have to allow what calls to you, and, just move forward a little at a time.
Yeah. And I think that's everything you said was just really, really amazing. And I think a big part of it too is that, sometimes the rules that you're living by, they might be, you might have taken them from the example of someone that you love in your life, like your grandparents. And a lot of the times those people in your life just want what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the rules that you're taking from them aren't even things that they've consciously told you that you should be doing.
Right.
It's pressure that you've put on yourself from them.
Yes.
You may not even be aware that you've been living by it.
Right. Oh, God, that's so true. Half the time, I think so many people just aren't even aware. Right.
Yeah.
Not because they don't want to be, but like you're saying, you just grow up in these established patterns and you just sort of adopt them.
Yeah, absolutely. So much. So now can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing and how you're building remote work school and what that is?
Sure. Now I'm doing a lot of things.
Yeah. Tell me all the things you're doing. Tell me all the things, because then we can look back on it and be like, wow, look at the things you were doing and where you are now.
I really should be doing less. Really. I have to get to that point.
We all should be, but we're not. So yeah.
So we have the blog, we have More Than A Wheelin, which I really love. I really enjoy blogging and writing and sharing and all that. So that is a lot of fun. Out of that came Remote Work 101, Work, Live, and Travel Where You Want, which was a course I built about the transition from, I'll call it corporate life or cubicle life or whatever job you were doing, into working remotely. And the reason I developed that course is really because I was getting so many questions from our readers and our followers about, well, how did you do it? And I don't know how I could do it. And I don't have any skills. And
it's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know it is, because there's so many options. But what's cool is that I can leverage so much of my corporate background, and especially my background in job placements.
Absolutely.
When I did, the Welfare to Work program. And, if I can help people get off welfare and find jobs, I can kind of help anybody, I feel really. Because, I think today most people are very skilled, multiple skilled actually, and just don't know it and don't know how to position it and don't even realize how many jobs are out there. And so my course teaches them how to move through that process.
Great.
And it covers everything from mindset to the more practical things like resume. Like, how do you build a resume in today's remote environment?
Yeah.
Where do you find the jobs? What are the top platforms? How do you position yourself on those platforms? How do you do a remote interview? How do you work remotely? Like, what's your office look like? So I kind of cover all of that.
Yeah, it's great.
To set people up for success. So that's kind of my big thing that I'm working on. I'm also working on a coaching program called Blogging Camp.
Ooh.
With some bloggers that you know.
Yes, I've been on one of the webinars.
Oh, have you? Okay, good. Well,
and it was wonderful. I'm like, I
good.
need to know more about all of those.
Well, come to the one on August 9th because we are going to blow your mind with that.
Okay. Oh, I will be there.
Working on it. Yeah.
Do you have a link for that yet?
Yes, I will send you the link.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Awesome. So yeah, just again, trying different things and building different products and services of value. Those are kind of my main thing.
Just a few.
Just a few
little things that you're working on in your back pocket.
Right. Yes.
Well, that's so cool. I definitely will be like, if you send me those links, I'm going to include them in the show notes because I want to check this out. Because that's the thing is like, even though I've been working remotely, like there's always more things you could know. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things like just because you've been doing something for a while doesn't mean that you can't still learn ways to be better about it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Me too. Always. I'm always taking courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. Mm-hmm. And you just never know when you're going to find something. Like just the other day, I found out that my audio processing software has an offline version.
Oh, nice.
And my life has been for many, many months based around where can I find the internet bandwidth to process large audio files because I need this website. And I'm like, I'm only $80 away from freedom.
Oh, I just love it when you find something like that and it like totally makes your process more efficient.
Yes. Yeah. So amazing. Well, Camille, this has just been such a fun conversation and I have a few rapid fire positivity questions for you.
Oh, okay.
They're fun. I promise.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So one thing that makes you happy.
Oh gosh. Food.
Okay. And name one thing that you're grateful for.
Oh my gosh, these are hot. What? Oh. Okay. Food? No, I'm just kidding. My husband.
Okay. And favorite place you've traveled to recently?
New Mexico, Taos.
Oh, I love the Santa Fe area.
Oh, so cool.
I love it. I'm a big Newsies fan. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
It's based in New York, but there's a song called Santa Fe because he just wants to be a cowboy. And so when I'm in Santa Fe, I just run through the streets and like sing this song and I just feel really special.
Oh, that's cute.
So, okay. Your favorite book that you've read recently?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
I've been wanting to read that.
You have to read it. You will love it.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. And then your favorite road trip song?
Oh, well, it has to be More Than a Feeling because we're More Than A Wheelin.
Perfect. Okay. And a podcast that you're listening to right now?
Positively Delighted. Hello.
Thank you very much. Are there any other ones you're listening to?
Yes. I am a diehard fan of Amy Porterfield.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'll include that in the show notes. Okay. Something that you do for fun.
Oh, whitewater kayaking.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
Is that a difference than normal kayaking?
Oh, yeah. Well, it depends.
Intense?
Well, it's on the river.
Okay.
And it's in rapids.
Okay, so the rapids, that is a little bit different.
Yeah. I don't like to kayak on a lake. That's too much work.
Okay. Oh, because the rapids are moving you.
That's right.
Got it. Because at first I'm like, that sounds more dangerous.
It is. No, it is more dangerous. And I don't do like a hard shell kayak or anything. I'm just doing little fun yaks, which are inflatable. Yeah.
Okay. See, the more you say this, the more dangerous it sounds to me. But I guess
it's fun.
I have a fear of open water, so I wouldn't put myself in that situation probably.
Well, there's no sharks or anything.
You say that. I watch too many sci-fi movies. There's probably a piranha shark in there somewhere.
Probably. Well, if you're in the Amazon, maybe.
You never know these days. It's probably like a piranha shark anaconda spider.
Right. Yeah. In Colorado. Yeah.
You never know. I was a biology major for one semester.
Oh, okay.
These things scare me.
Wow. Okay.
Side tangent. Okay. And then last one, something on your bucket list.
I really want to go to South Korea.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Just
really
is there anything you want to see in particular?
I want to see a K-pop concert.
Oh my gosh. That's something I never even knew I needed in my life.
You do. Go watch the documentary on K-pop by Vice TV. It's very interesting. Yeah.
All right. I will go look that up.
Well, as a musician, you'll like that.
Okay, cool. I'm going to look that up. Well, Camille, this has been so much fun. Can you tell us the best way to contact you and connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. morethanawheelin.com. And we're on Instagram. That's I would say Facebook, but honestly, I think Instagram is a better spot because I'm there more often. But Facebook too. And yeah, those are the main places.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode with Camille. I hope you are super pumped and inspired to look at your life from a new perspective and create rules for your life that excite you. If working remotely is something that excites you, then you have to check out Camille's course through her remote work school called Remote Work 101. This course will teach you everything you need to know about working remotely, including where to start, how to identify your unique remote working skills, creating a budget for your remote work life, how to find remote jobs, applying for remote jobs, remote work interviewing tips, mobile office setups, bonuses, and so much more. Seriously, I wish that I had this course when I started working remotely. I'm working my way through the course right now to write up a full review of this resource for y'all, and I am learning so much. I'm going through all the activities, which are giving me so many new ideas for ways to find remote work that I'd never even thought of. Also, since I'm in this interesting transition right now from client work to building my own brand, this course is helping me identify which decisions are aligned with the type of life that I want while working remotely. I highly recommend that you check this out, and for you, my podcast listeners, I have a special discount code that you can use to get this course 20% off, which is an amazing deal. So head over to the show notes for episode 7 at positivelydelighted.com and click on the link to check out Remote Work 101. In the checkout, use the code RW10120OFF to get 20% off this course and start your journey to remote work freedom. If you're interested in checking out Camille's upcoming blogging camp webinar on August 9th, head over to the show notes for this episode to find the link to this as well. I'm super excited for this webinar. I watched the last one from blogging camp and I learned so much. I've already signed up and you should sign up too. And if you love this episode, let Camille know over at More Than A Wheelin on Instagram and follow her and Bryce on their adventures in RV life and remote work at morethanawheelin.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Positively Delighted Show. Be sure to head over to positivelydelighted.com to get the show notes for this episode. If you liked the show so far and you've been learning a lot from the content, I would love if you could go to iTunes or your favorite podcast listening app and leave a review. You would be my favorite person ever. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a positively delighted day. See you next time.